Hi, I'm Tracy, and I'm here to walk through how to demo the RAYMEX Lift. I'll walk through all of the features and functions and explain a little bit about why we designed things the way we did. So the first thing I'm going to do is go through the independent fall recovery. I'm going to start out on the floor, and I can start out by lying on my side or on my back. And I demonstrate that all you need really is enough strength, but you do need some strength in your trunk to be able to go from prone to sit to supine to sit. You also need enough strength to be able to either scoot yourself along the floor or hip hike along the floor to get over close to the device. And you can maneuver the device around a little bit and get it in a little bit better position for you. So now that I'm here beside the device, I'm going to start getting myself back up to a standing position. So how I'm going to do that is through the seat controls that are on the side panels. We deliberately put seat controls on each side panel down low so they could be accessed from the floor without having to reach up to the handles to control the seat, because some people may have issues raising their arms with shoulder issues and so on. So we put seat controls down low. There are also seat controls on each handle for people to use when they're in the device. And there's a caregiver switch located at the top of the frame so that caregivers can just roll it up behind and can operate it without having to bend over, putting themselves in any risk. So as I said, I'm just going to use the side controls here and lower the seat all the way to the floor. The seat moves at a ½ inch per second. We found when we started, we were moving it at an inch per second, but it was just too aggressive for people, especially after they had fallen. And so we slowed it down to a ½ inch per second. And as you can see, it will descend all the way flush to the floor. So now that it's on the floor itself, you can see that the front edge of the seat has a bevel to it. And that's just to make it a little bit easier for the person to slide back up onto the seat. The next thing we did was, in early prototypes, we noticed people were grabbing the wheels. And so in order not to get their hands dirty and or risk injuring themselves, we put fenders across the wheels. We also put a non-slip surface coating on it, because one thing that happens when somebody falls, they get sweaty palms, and the last thing we want them doing is slipping off that if they're using it for some support. So now that I get myself over beside the device and I'm using the handhold a little bit, now what I want to do is get this arm up out of the way. So we've got pull tabs, these yellow pull tabs, and you just pull those out and they pull out a pin that's back here, and the arm just rotates up out of the way. So now I've got a much better pathway to get onto the seat, and I can use that handhold, and my hand is on the seat, and I'll do some combination of scooting and hip hike and get myself turned around. The other thing I want to point out, so I'm going to move this up out of the way to give myself a little more elbow room, is we fishtailed the design on this tab deliberately so that if somebody's got significant dexterity issues with their hand, arthritis, and or they've got an amputation, you can use the heels of your hand or a stub to pull that forward and just move it up out of the way. So now I've got a little bit more maneuvering room. And now what I can do is slide my way back onto the seat using these handholds if I need to give myself a little bit more support. And now that I'm on the seat, I can pull the arms back down, because we always want those down when we're in the seat, and keep our hands and arms on the armrests. And now what I can do is use one of these paddle switches to raise myself up. We actually had to get an exception from the regulatory bodies to put a paddle switch on. And the reason we put a paddle switch on was similar to the fishtail design, is that if somebody's got significant arthritis and or an amputation, we still want them to be able to maneuver the device by using, a stump or the heel of their hand, that sort of thing. And so now I'm going to raise myself up, and I'm going to draw your attention over here to the control panel. When I activate the seat, you're going to see the battery indicator light come on, which is right here. When both parts of that battery indicator are lit up, that means the battery is fully charged and ready for use. When you see the bottom part only lit up, that means there's somewhere between 11 and 25% of the battery left, We recommend people charge it at that point, but it's not essential. It will still operate no problem. When the lower part begins to flash, that's when you have to recharge it, because that tells you that it is 10% or less of the battery, and we don't want people getting stuck midway through a lift. And so that will begin to flash. Once it goes below the 10% level, the seat will disengage and the brakes will unlock as well. And so it can be turned into just a plain old rollator walker so that people can get to where they need to charge it up. But I just wanted to explain a little bit about the battery indicator. So when I start to move, you'll see the battery indicator light come on. You're also going to see these lights light up, indicating that the brake is on. So you'll see the lock light come on. In this particular prototype, that lock light is still red. On the production models, it will be blue, because there was a new regulation brought in last April that said you cannot use red unless you're signifying and warning that there's an imminent injury likelihood or imminent death likelihood. So we changed that color to blue, but you'll see it red right here. And so as you can see, the battery is lit up. That came on momentarily. And now I'm able to raise myself back up. What I want to do is raise myself to a point where my hip is above my knee, but my feet are still on the ground, because that's the safe sit to stand height. I'm going to show you in a little bit how we can actually preset that height so that a person doesn't have to even think about what height they stop at. So I'm going to bring that up to the point, again, where my hip is above my knee, but my feet are still on the ground. And that will be probably at about 22 inches for me. And that's about the right height right there. So now that it's up here, you can see my hip is well above my knee. My feet are still on the ground. And now I just use the handles for a little bit of extra leverage, and it's easy to stand. And now what I want to do is turn around, and I always want to keep one hand on the device. That's what all the OTs and PTs will instruct, is to always keep a hand on the device. So now that I've turned around, as you recall, the brakes came on automatically, so I can't go anywhere with it. So now what I want to do is unlock it, and I just simply press the unlock light here, which you'll see come on green. And now it turns into a rollator walker, so I can walk where I need to. And I would also like to point out that we have the manual brakes, just like any typical rollator walker. We've got the manual brakes here. So as I'm walking, those are the running brakes, and they stop. And I can also push down on them, and those become park brakes as well, just like any normal rollator walker. So the next thing I want to show you is how to use this as a transfer aid. So I'm just going to bring and get a regular height chair. Most chairs are about 18 inches in height, so I'm just going to use this as a demonstration. And this is about 18 inches off the ground. And so most older adults, you'll know when they're trying to get up, especially if they've got mobility challenges, they start that rocking motion back and forth to try and get some momentum to get up. And a lot of the times they're successful. They will get up, and if they're at a table, you'll see they'll use the hand, put their hand on the table to use that for extra leverage. And so they can get up this way. But sometimes that rocking momentum carries them forward, and they end up going down on all fours and therefore unable to get up. So there are lift chairs out there. I know, because we bought one for my father, and it was great. So that's where he sat. The only issue is then they're limited. That becomes the safe chair for them. With this, you can take it anywhere you go, whether you're visiting, neighbors or family, or you just simply want to sit in a different seat, because that becomes your favorite seat for watching TV. You want to sit on the sofa as opposed to the lift chair. So all you need to do is just position this off to the side, and when you do want to get up, just roll it into you and get it as close as you possibly can. And so now that it's here, all I want to do is make sure is lower the seat so it's an inch or two below the height of the seat that I'm seated on. You always want to transfer from higher to lower and use gravity as your friend. So what I'm going to do is lower this down. I'm just going to use these controls right here. And these operate, this paddle switch, by the way, operates just like airplane controls. You push forward to go down, you pull back to go up. So I'm going to push this forward and you hear the brakes come on. And so now the device is nice and secure. And I'm lowering that seat a little bit so it's a little lower than the seat that I'm on. And the device is locked in place. Again, I want to use this pull tab and pull the arm up out of the way. So now I've got a clear path to transfer over, and just with a nice smooth motion, put the 1 foot over here, and I can either put one hand on the handle or one hand on the seat, one hand on the seat behind me, or if there's an arm on this chair, one here. And now all I want to do is just a nice, slow, sliding transfer over, very controlled. And there's hardly any strain on your lower extremities at all. And then I just pull this down and I do the same thing. Now I just want to raise myself back up. Again, that same position where hip is above the knee and the feet are still on the floor. And now I can turn around, or now I can get up and turn around and walk away and go where I need to. And you can do the same thing in reverse. If you do want to, rather than plopping down on it, you can just do the same thing in reverse. Use the seat, lower it down, but make sure again that you're going from higher to lower. So this would be about an inch or two above the height of the seat, and then you just slide yourself onto it. So it's the same, but in reverse. Next, I want to show you is how to use this for toileting. And I generally recommend, and I should have shown you this before, that you walk with that seat up, because you can walk inside the frame. And what this allows you to do is walk upright. A lot of rollator walkers, that seat is a bit of a barrier, and you tend to be leaning forward a little bit. With this one, you can walk with the seat up, and it gives you a much better posture, because you really do want to be able to draw a straight line from your center of mass to your base of support, which is your feet. That significantly reduces your risk of falling. And so walking this way. The other benefit for this is about toileting. This open area here is designed to wrap around all toilets. And so we're just going to pretend that that's a toilet here. And so I just walk up and approach it as if I were going to use this, turn this around and wrap it around so that it comes close to the toilet. And it allows me to do that because that seat's up out of the way. Now I'm actually going to use the caregiver switch to lower the handles down, because these now become my handles for leverage, to lower myself in a controlled manner and use them for leverage to raise myself back up. So now I'm just simply going to lower these down to a point that looks and feels comfortable for me. And now I can still reach these, and I slowly can lower myself down in a controlled manner, because that's one of the places people tend to fall, is it's an uncontrolled seat on the toilet. They can slip off one side or the other. This way it gives you a nice, secure and stable platform to lower yourself down. And so you can do your business, and in some cases you may want to actually lower it a little bit further to use as the leverage to get back up. And so now that I've done my business, I can use these as some extra leverage, raise myself back up, hold on and adjust my garments as I need to, do what I need to there. And now I just simply, again, use the same button and raise the handles back up to the height that is good for me. And again, it just moves at a ½ inch per second. So that's the right height for me. And now I can't go anywhere because the brake is on. So I simply unlock the brake there. It comes on green. Now, again, it turns into the rollator walker. I leave this seat folded up. And now what I want to do is be able to go wash my hands. So the next advantage of having this seat be able to flip up is I can approach the counter. So we're just going to pretend that this is the counter and the taps are back here. Because I can stand inside the frame, I don't have to awkwardly bend. I can just reach the taps and wash my hands and do what I need to. This is also handy, especially for when you're brushing your teeth. You can get and still be within the frame itself, and I can even put the brake on there. So now it's nice and secure. I can reach these taps. I can easily bend over and have the sink there so I can brush my teeth, because with a typical rollator walker, that seat is in the way and you can't actually reach the taps and the sink properly, and your spittle ends up all over the front, or you position it awkwardly off to the side and you aren't really surrounded by a good base of support. So keeping that seat up has a lot of advantages. So now that I'm all done washing my hands, oh, the other thing I should mention is if you're at a stove, a lot of stoves have the controls at the back. You can safely reach those by standing inside the frame. It allows you to do a lot of things at a counter and be able to reach it and approach it securely while still having that frame or support frame around you. So now I can take that off and I can walk away and go do the next thing that I have to do. So I want to show you a couple of activities for how it's useful to help in just normal day-to-day activities. If there's something on a lower shelf, and I think this one becomes obvious, but we're going to pretend that we've got a shelf down there. And so what I do is I'm going to put the seat down and pull this up close to the shelf, and I want to put the brake on. You can see the red light, the brake comes on, it's nice and secure. I can now sit down on this, and if there's something down low, and in fact I'll put this down here and we'll pretend that I need to get that. I can't bend over without putting myself at risk, because bending, kneeling, and squatting put me at risk for a fall. So now what I've done is sit on this, I just lower myself down. And you can do this to reach your pots and pans that are on the lower shelves, your socks that may be on the lower shelf to help you with dressing. And now that I'm down low enough, I can simply reach this and put it up on the counter and then raise myself back up. Now I want to point out that it takes longer than what it used to when I could, without having to worry about bending over. But the point is we can still do it. So it restores some independence. It does take a little bit longer, but it keeps people engaged and they can remain independent by still being able to do these things without being at risk of falling. So now that I've done that, I can stand back up, turn around, and unlock it. And then now I can do what I need to at the counter. I can turn it around and use it at the counter and do what I need to with this, food prep, whatever it is. The other thing that sometimes happens, though, is people get tired of standing. So fatigue is one of those things that sets in and people will go down. If they've been standing too long at a counter or a sink, sometimes you'll see they end up grabbing onto the edge of it and they go down just because fatigue sets in. So if there is some extended meal prep to do or any kind of hobbies or work at a counter height, this seat rises up to 24 inches, which is your standard counter height stool. So again, what I need to do is just approach the counter and we'll just pretend I'm there at a counter. And again, apply the brakes before I sit on it. And now that I've sat down on this, I can raise myself up to the maximum height of 24 inches, which puts me at a proper counter height stool. So if I raise this up all the way to the top, so now I'm all the way at the 24 inches, but as you can see, my feet are a little bit dangling on the floor. So what that means is there's a little bit of pressure under the underside of my legs, which after a while could actually end up potentially cutting off my circulation. So those fenders and handholds that we used on the floor to help mount the device become footrests. So I just pick up my leg and I put them on each of the footrests, and that takes all the strain off the underside of my leg. And now I can sit at the counter and do what I need. The other thing I can do to give myself a little more elbow room if I'm going to be cutting or chopping with a knife is I just lift these arms up out of the way and get them up. And now I've got all kinds of elbow room. The brakes are on, so I'm nice and secure. And now I can sit and do what I want for any period of time at the counter and work safely. And when I'm ready to get up, I just pull these back down and then lower myself, because again, my feet are dangling. So I just want to lower myself down a little bit to the point where, again, my feet are safely on the floor, but my hips are still above my knees. And now I can get up, and I want to lift up that seat again, turn around inside the device. I can take off the brake, and now I can walk away and go do what I need to do. And again, I'm able to walk with an upright posture. So the next thing I wanted to show you was how we can use this to navigate narrower spaces. So I put the seat down. So the first thing you need to do, because it can work partially folded, but I have to lower the seat. And then I use the handle that's on the right side of the seat, and I just simply pull that up and fold it in some. And now I can walk with it narrowed in so that I can navigate between narrower spaces here. So between this chair and this table, I need to get it through there. I can do that. Now I can show you how to fold it up so I put that down, fold it up for storage or transport. And so what we want to do is, again, you just use your left hand to pull it up all the way in, and it folds in and clicks. And to unlock it for use, all you do is there is a little latch there. That latch on the production models is bright yellow, the same color as the tabs on the front, so it's very easy to spot. And you just squeeze that in and open it up and spread it out, and then press on the seat to make sure it's flat. A couple of hints. What I typically do when we're transporting, or if you really want to minimize the footprint for the device, is I want to lower the seat down so that the seat becomes level pretty much with the fenders. And this is what's going to enable you to have the smallest footprint possible. So it will lower down. And again, it just moves at a ½ inch per second. So we get it roughly down to that height. And all I want to do, I'm going to take off the brakes, because having the brakes off actually does make it a little easier for folding. But then I want to pull these tabs up and just pop those arms up. And then I'm going to fold it in, bend over, fold it in until you hear that latch again. And now it's in its smallest footprint possible. This is actually how it arrives out of the box, is just like this. And now with that latch, I can turn it around and pick it up this way, and it does not fly open. And so to unfold it for use, all we do is we want to open this latch, spread it open, and then flatten that seat down, lower these handles, and then we can raise those up to the height that we need. So the next thing I did want to show you is also how the device can be used as a sit-to-stand exercise and rehab tool. So I'm just going to bring this up so that the seat's about 22 inches. And I'll just get this chair out of the way. Take that brake off. And so now you can see that there are graduated markers on the side, and in the production model, these are going to be both in metric and in imperial. So I'm just going to lock this and sit on the seat. And now, so 22 inches is a good sit to stand height for me. Again, most chairs are 18 inches, and maybe that's where I've got trouble standing. What we want to do is actually encourage people to potentially use this every day for some standard sit to stand exercises. The ability to go from sit to stand is actually one of the leading indicators of frailty or fitness. And so with this, I could do a certain number of reps using the handles to help me a little bit, and do that, 4 or 5 times. And then I can lower it down and get progressively lower. So I can drop it down an inch and then do it again. And so that helps people do some sit to stand exercises and build up the strength in their lower extremities. And how they can increase the degree of difficulty, instead of using the handles, they can just cross their arms and see if they can do it this way. And so that helps them rebuild the strength. And rebuilding the strength in the lower extremities is actually a fantastic fall prevention technique. So now that I've shown that, I think the next things I want to talk about, I showed you the battery indicator already, and I'm just going to show you where the battery is. The battery is in a sealed compartment underneath. And so that it's not a swappable battery. It is always in there. And so the battery is rechargeable, and we put the recharging port here up high so that somebody can, if they're seated, and so I always put the brakes on before I sit in it, but they can reach it from a seated position, or they can reach it without having to bend over to the ground. So they can reach and access that port right there. The next thing I want to show you is if you're going to deploy this to a user at home, so it's only going to be used by one user, you probably want to do a bit of a tailored setup. And there's 2 steps to setting it up and tailoring it for the user. The first, and I had mentioned it before, is the preset seat height. So when somebody falls and they're a little bit jarred and disoriented and they're raising themselves up, or the caregiver is raising them up, it automatically stops at their ideal sit to stand height. So for me, and I think we mentioned this already, and I'm just going to put the brake on before I sit down, and I'm going to raise myself up, and that ideal height for me is about 22 inches. And so that's, again, where my hip is well above my knee, but my feet are still on the floor. So that's a perfect height. This is the one thing we did put down low and out of the way, and we did that deliberately because we want somebody with that's kind of able-bodied to be able to get down and do this. We don't want somebody accidentally resetting this. So at this point, there is a little silver button down there. You can see it. It's down low and out of the way, and I'm just going to press that, and you're going to see the brake lights all around the device light up, and it only takes a second or two. So I'm going to press that, and you see those brake lights come on. That means the seat is now set at 22 inches. And I'm going to prove that by lowering it down a little bit. So I'll just lower it an inch. And I want to point out that on the handles, there is a preset seat height icon. So it's this icon right here. And when I raise this up and hit the 22 inches, you're going to see that come on and flash blue. So I raise this up. It automatically stops, and then you see that light come on. And so that sets the preset seat height. So anytime now when I raise that up, it will stop there. It does only work on ascent. When you're descending, it will keep going all the way. So it only works when you're rising, not when you're lowering. But you can override it so that you can get it up all the way to use it as that counter height perch that I talked about before. And all you need to do is, once that preset seat height stops flashing, is you just release the paddle switch and then raise it again, and you can keep going. So you can override it. And then the second thing is, so I'm going to put this back down. So now that we've got the preset seat height, I'm going to put it back down to the 22 inches, is you want to adjust the handle height. Now in my case, this is actually adjusted at a perfect height already. You want to set the handles so that the brake in the wrist is right at the handle height. And how you do that is simply, there's thumb screws here that you just simply back off the top one and then release the second one down below. And then all you do is slide the handle. Oops, I gotta back this off a little bit more. Is slide that handle up and down in those notches. So you just push that down and it secures into the next notch. And then you can just thumb screw tighten that. And I was going the wrong way. And so you just tighten that back up again. And then your handles are nice and secure. So that's how you adjust the handles on both sides. So it's simply set the seat height and then set the handle height for the user. And that's what you need to do. And then now I want to show you the accessories. Oops, I didn't secure that in. And so the only accessory that we have right now is the cup holder. And I love this cup holder because it's actually got the carve outs for a mug handle, so you can use it as a proper mug holder. And you can see it's got little rubberized lips in here so that it's not super strenuous. It's enough to secure a cup that goes in there, but you don't have to really yank on it to pull it out, and liquid goes flying everywhere. So it was my favorite cup holder. And what we've done is we put a universal attach joint right here on both sides of the device that matches up with this portion on the cup holder here. The beauty of it is you can see that this is a separate unit from the cup itself. So we can put anything on the other side of this universal attach joint. Right now it's just a cup holder, but you can do like a bigger version of this to put Sani wipes in. We could also create a soft-sided small pouch that we can put in so that you can put your glasses, your cell phone, your keys. Those are in development and will be on the way. The only one available right now is the cup holder, and it just simply slides into place on either side. So you slide it in there or slide it in here. So you can always have up to 2 attachments on the device at any one time. The only thing we recommend is when you go to fold it and put it in your vehicle is that you take the attachments off. And I think that's all of the features and the functions on the device. There are a few other facts I wanted to convey. The safe working load on the device is 300 pounds. So it is safe to lift users that are up to 300 pounds and up to 6'8". Because the seat goes up to 24 inches and we've got those adjustable handles, it is good for people that are generally up to about 6'8" in height. It's got a 19-inch wide seat on it, so it's fairly roomy and comfortable for most adults. It can be used both inside and outside. It can also be used in the rain. It has an ingress protection rating of 2.2, which means that particles and rocks and so on aren't going to affect it. And it can go out in the rain. That compartment for the battery, as I explained, is a sealed compartment. All of the other compartments have sealed components on the inside, so taking it out in the rain is not going to affect the operation. However, we don't want it immersed in water, and we don't want it used inside a shower. So please refrain from doing that. But taking it out into a light rain is just fine. It can be for cleaning purposes, if you're using it, especially in a communal environment, it can be used with warm water and mild soap, or any of the standard sanitizing solutions and sanitizing wipes that are typically used inside healthcare facilities are just fine to use on this. These, the cushions on both the backrest and the seat feel like they might be porous. It sort of feels a bit like neoprene. But they are not porous. So no matter what you put on them, it will not seep inside. The turning radius, I do want to point out, is slightly larger than your typical rollator walker. It turns fairly well, but it is slightly larger. And the reason for that is that the wheelbase on this is 24.25 inches. Most rollator walkers are about 22.75, so it's about 1.5 inches wider. And then the front to back is where you've got another couple of inches in dimension. And the reason we had to do that was to provide a super stable frame to be able to do the lifting. And so we needed that base, and the geometry of that base had to be of a certain size to get it all the way up to 24 inches in seat height. The device itself weighs 36 pounds, but I can lift it and take it and put it in and out of my vehicle, no problem. And the other thing, the final thing I wanted to point out is that you're going to notice down here, this is at an angle. This is at an angle deliberately and intentionally. So is this, the top of the frame. Do not try to flatten this. Do not try to flatten this. This is all the way open. We know because the seat is flat and it's locked. These have a deliberate break in them to make it easier to fold. If these were flat, trying to break that from the neutral plane would require a whole lot more force than what this does. So this shape and the way these meet on an angle is actually deliberate. So please do not ever step on this or press down on this. The only thing you should ever press down on is the seat to make sure it's locked in place. And once that's done, the device is locked solid. And I think that's everything for the features and functions of the RAYMEX Lift. And thank you very much for joining us. And thank you for carrying and recommending the RAYMEX Lift. Have a great day.